The story you are about to see has been told before. A lot. And now we are going to tell it again. But different.
Holy crap, did you hear? Final Fantasy 17 is going back to turn-based. Sound the alarms, Final Fantasy is saved finally. No pun intended. Whoa! Wow! I swear, if I had $1 every time I heard that Final Fantasy was only good because it had turn-based combat, I'd be richer than 99.9% of the world. Now, I know this has been an ongoing debate for years upon years since Final Fantasy went into 3D, over to non-traditional turn-based combat, and everything in between. Quick reminder though, Final Fantasy 7, 9, 12, and 13 are not typical traditional turn-based games, despite where some are going to say online. They use things like active time-based battle systems and command actions, and even those with traditional battle systems use some unique systems in there as well, just a FYI. But with the latest interview from Yoshi P, aka the director of Final Fantasy XIV, the MMO, and producer of Final Fantasy XVI, the heavy action-focused game, many are wondering what is going to be happening with Final Fantasy XVII. Although not officially announced / no trailers, it's obvious there's going to be a Final Fantasy XVII. Question is, will 17 be a turn-based game, action-based, mixed, command-based, or will they go back to the active time battle that we saw back in the late 90s and early 2000s? Well, it's time to get out those theory hats and discuss what we want to see here in Final Fantasy 17. And of course, civilly discuss what makes Final Fantasy, well, Final Fantasy. I'm sure nothing is going to go wrong in the comments at all in this video.
You serious?
Now, before we get into discussions and opinions and everything, for those of you who did not see the article, to summarize what Yoshi P said, he stated he is not necessarily working on Final Fantasy 17 or beyond. Then, when asked if Final Fantasy 17 will return to turn-based, citing the Expedition 33 and its success, he answers he is not sure as it will be up to the decision of the creators in charge. He states that it's up to the creators and what gameplay loop / combat system they want to create. There was also some talk about 14 and its expansions in the rest of the article, and finally, he also states that he does not have any plans to retire anytime soon from Square Enix. Again, if you want to read the full article, check the link in the description below, and you'll be able to read it no problem. Okay, so that's pretty easy, right? We don't know who the director of 17 is, what their plan is for the combat, and we'll just have to simply wait and see. But as always though, gamers love to have opinions, and talk about why one game is better than the other. We've been doing it for 20 plus years. So, the big question is, should Final Fantasy 17 go turn-based? Myself, personally, I'm not so sure it should. Sure, turn-based can be fun, and if the director of Final Fantasy 17 came up with a system to innovate on turn-based combat that was unique, remember they're not just going to simply copy something like Expedition 33, and could push the franchise forward, then I am sure they probably would. Or maybe the director finds something from turn-based and the Rebirth combat system and is able to fuse them in together to make something even better. Technically, the possibilities are endless. It all just depends on what they come up with. But there is something I want to address before I give my own personal opinion on what I think 17 should focus on and what I think they're going to choose in the end. And that thing that I want to focus on is the concept of turn-based being Final Fantasy. Over many, many years, but especially the last few years, I have seen the same comment in our videos and other videos saying, if Final Fantasy just went turn-based, it would be amazing again. And to that I say, really? So if Final Fantasy 17 went turn-based, but the story was lacking, the visuals were bland, the performance was buggy, and the characters were boring, it would be amazing just because it's turn-based? Now, if you know sarcasm / can hear it, then you should know the answer to that already. Of course not. Any game is not just one bit that makes it amazing. Heck, look back at any of your favorite Final Fantasy games. I'm willing to bet all the money in your pocket that regardless of your favorite Final Fantasy game, it was not the gameplay that made it the best. It was the characters, or the story bits, or the world, or a combo of all that stuff combined with the combat. I mean, let's also be honest here. If Expedition 33 had the exact same combat that it currently does right now, but the characters were bland, the story went nowhere, the music was lacking, or anything else that has made that game great, that game would have reviewed way lower than what it got, and it would not be in the running for Game of the Year. Total side note real quick, if Expedition 33 does not, at the very minimum, win Best Music, I call rigged. The point I am trying to make is that it's great if you prefer turn-based combat over action-based, or active time battle, or whichever one you simply prefer. Heck, Final Fantasy 13 has active time battle, yet I know many gamers who don't like 13, which, based on the comments that you see online, does not make sense because I thought all Final Fantasies that were turn-based were amazing. See how that argument kind of starts to fall apart? Again, hopefully you can hear the sarcasm in my voice. Simply having turn-based combat in a Final Fantasy game does not make it amazing. It does not put it at the top of the rest of the competition or other Final Fantasy games. There is a reason that whenever you ask somebody what their favorite Final Fantasy game is, a majority of players have their own opinions on what would be the top 3, their favorite one, all because of different reasons. And I'm pretty confident in saying that the main reason for every single one's favorite Final Fantasy game is not because it's simply turn-based. Because if it was, then every single Final Fantasy game would be at the top of every list, which is impossible because everyone likes it for different reasons. Again, story, music, characters, setting, world, etc. You kind of get where I'm going with this. So, do I think Final Fantasy VII should go turn-based? Well, my answer simply is, if it pushes the series forward and it's got some unique mechanics, then sure, go for it. But don't just copy what has been done in the past, and that includes Expedition 33. If turn-based combat helps push Final Fantasy XVII forward and the franchise, then great. But at the same time, if something closer to, say, 7R or something between 16 and 13 works better for whatever creative vision that director/producer has for the game, then go with that. What I want from a Final Fantasy game is a good story, cool characters, awesome music, a world worth exploring and setting, and overall just fun to play. That's why I personally love Expedition 33. It has all of that stuff that I just mentioned. Just the gameplay alone would not have made it my personal game of the year. What Final Fantasy XVII needs to do to get high reviews and players playing it and talking about it to make it go viral is honestly some of these following points right here. An engaging story with interesting characters that balances humor, mature themes, and connects players to that world. Yes, every Final Fantasy has humor in it. Even the older games were not just pure dark and pushing the boundaries of what could be said in games. Older games like Doom did that way more. As with any Final Fantasy game, it also needs kick-ass music that fits the world and gets everyone talking about it. Obviously, the gameplay needs to be engaging and have its own unique spins on it, whether again it's turn-based, action-based, or anything in between. And finally, this one might surprise you, it needs to have good translations. When I see videos talking about the dialogue being weird or kind of preteen friendly or anything like that, some of that honestly has to do with how things are translated from Japanese to English. Also, this is a JRPG. Some parts are gonna be weird to a Western audience. Heck, you can even go back into some of the JRPGs and other Final Fantasy games and almost kind of chalk it up to like a manga if you really think about it. I mean, OG Final Fantasy VII, just gonna say it right now, you might not look at it the same way ever again. And also, if you think that for even a second, the older games did not have any of this kind of weird translations or funny moments or anything like that, then you are wearing some extra special nostalgia glasses. Every single game has moments like that. Don't believe all the comments that you see online. Oh, and of course, a bonus one right here. It needs to be releasing on as many platforms as it can, which obviously we know Square is doing since they're phasing out their exclusive contracts and everything. And this is the important one, and have good performance across the board. This means good PC port/performance and a rock solid 60 FPS on console when you go into performance mode. Looking at you, Final Fantasy 16, you know what you did. Now look, in the end, people will always have their preferred Final Fantasy. They have been for years. Heck, even before the change over to more action-based combat, people hated games like Final Fantasy VIII, even though it was technically a turn-based system. Some prefer the old Final Fantasy games like 3 and 6 over, say, 7 and 9, even though they were all turn-based to some degree, yet funny enough, use action time-based combat systems. If you've looked at the history of Final Fantasy, they have always been moving forward in terms of different ways to play their games. Do all of them stick the landing? Not really, but that's up to each player's preference. You'll see a lot of comments online bashing the current Final Fantasy, which is Final Fantasy 16 right now at the time of this recording, but I personally love that game. But I recognize its flaws with only having one playable character and a lack of RPG mechanics. However, things like the music, the story, and the characters were top-notch and screamed Final Fantasy. I mean, heck, we fought the summons for crying out loud. But this happens with every Final Fantasy game if you think about it. The new one comes out, everyone complains about it, the next one comes out after that, and all of a sudden the one beforehand is considered a masterpiece or considered really good. So, I mean, it's gonna happen regardless. I mean, not to shatter anyone's view of anything, but if you think Final Fantasy X, which is considered one of the best out of everyone when it comes to the Final Fantasy franchise, if you think that game is perfect, then great. But I can easily name some flaws with that game, and I played that back on the PS2. The pacing, for one thing, was definitely annoying, and some of the more linear structures did not work, especially back during those days, especially after we had more open area games like OG7. Does this mean that I hate 10 all of a sudden? No, of course not, but I'm not blind to think that it's perfect. Little secret, no game is perfect, and I can recognize that the combat alone is not going to make a game amazing. Bottom line, whatever Square does with 17, it will never please everyone. Old gamers are going to want things one way, while younger gamers are going to want it another, and everyone in between is going to want something else. All we can do is wait and see what the game becomes. And just FYI, if it's not something that you personally want, then find another game that scratches that itch for you. Regardless of these comments, and by the way, I hate seeing these comments online, Square has not abandoned turn-based games. Dragon Quest, Octopath, Bravely Default, and so many more are all traditional turn-based games. Just because they don't have the words final and fantasy on the box does not make them any less of a JRPG. If 17 is not your cup of tea when it comes out, try some of these games, or try to look for other turn-based combat games on the market. Simply complaining about a game not being exactly what you want does nothing. Otherwise, if it did, Square would have gone back to turn-based years ago after 13 and 15. Now, yes, there's the obvious vote with your wallets, but a lot of people have played these games. In fact, 16 brought in a ton of new players according to Square. Maybe the sales weren't the greatest, but it is a single-player game. It's not a live service game. And so that's not really a great way to track stuff sometimes. Plus, as we know, Square has stupid, crazy high expectations. Yet, we see games like Metaphor just sold 2 million at the time of this recording, and that's amazing for them. But because Final Fantasy simply has a bigger name, 3, 5, 7 million is not considered that good to a lot of people. I mean, heck, 7 Rebirth was awarded so many achievements back in 2024 and was nominated for Game of the Year. And that game was not turn-based. It was a combo of 2 systems, real-time action combat and command-based. Just some food for thought, though. But I'm going to leave it there. I want to know your thoughts on this topic. Let's try and please keep this civilized. I know this is the internet, but regardless. What would you like to see Final Fantasy 17 be in terms of the combat, and keep in mind, and what setting, characters, world, and more do you want to see? Of course, if you want to talk more about Final Fantasy and other stuff like this, then make sure to join us live every Friday evening on YouTube and Twitch, as we like to talk about this with everyone that we can. Even if we're talking about something else or playing a different game, come on in, put a comment in the live chat, and we'll talk about it, because we enjoy talking about everything gaming. And if you enjoyed this video, then consider hitting that like button and a sub to the channel. We appreciate the support a lot. I've been Talon with Direct Gaming. Thanks again for stopping by, though, and I hope you have a great week. Until next time, though, John A.